President Fox has already introduced President Alvaro Uribe, so I will only say that he is known for being a tough conservative. We like those words, don't we, George? Tough conservative. Served 2 terms as president of Colombia. He was re-elected by a landslide. As BBC News noted, his hardline stance against the guerrillas who had waged a 4-decade-long war on the state won him plaudits, and he joins high approval ratings. He forced the rebels out of Colombia's towns and cities and back into the countryside, bringing peace to the everyday lives of Colombians. It is my great honor to introduce you, Presidente Alvaro Uribe.
Muchísimas gracias. Siéntense, por favor. Take a seat, please. Muchas gracias. Me perdonarán que utilice este teléfono, pero yo soy un Latin American politician, and I don't know how to speak shorter. Therefore, it is 7:30. I will talk no more than 18 minutes. I will try to do my best. My dear friend, President Vicente Fox, Juan Hernandez, distinguished Provost, my fellow Colombians, Dr. Espinosa, la señora, Silvia Gutiérrez, Edison, muy apreciado Maestro Martina, todos los integrantes del trío, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor to be tonight with you. Thank you, President Fox and Juan, for this kind invitation. It is a privilege. And thank you to all of you for coming. At noon, we spoke at the university about my own experience in Colombia. Let me tonight, given the audience, to deliver to you some thoughts about Latin American and the Caribbean countries. This region has almost 600 million people, very young people. The average age is 26, 28. We have improved a lot. Although we have enormous disparities, we cannot compare Haiti with Brazil, Honduras with Costa Rica. In general, the region is doing well. In the last year, we have left out of poverty 40 million people, but we still have 180 million people in poverty. Nowadays, 64% of the total population belongs to what I can call a progressive middle class in expansion. The region is very rich in natural resources. We have 10% of the world oil reserves, 6% of natural gas. We have many possibilities in biofuels. For instance, Colombia is the second largest in ethanol after Brazil and the first largest in biodiesel from palm oil. And Colombia, as many other countries in the region, does not need to cut the jungle down in order to produce sources for inputs for biofuels. We have in the region enormous possibilities to expand food security and at the same time to produce bioenergy. We have all the possibilities with geothermic energy. And the world will need for the year 2030 to expand energy generation by 40%. In the region, we have 50% of the world potable water. And for the year 2030, we need to increase supply of potable water by 30%. We have 26% of the fertile land. For the year 2030, the world will need to increase food supply by 40%. Therefore, here you see many challenges for our region. I want no longer to speak about governments on the left and governments on the right. Now, with the exception of Cuba, every government in the region brags that it is fulfilling the principles of the rule of law. For I have chosen 5 elements that I call the principles, the 5 democratic standards, to look through them at every country and to conclude whether or not this country fulfills the democratic parameters, whether or not this country is a progressive democracy or all the opposite, a regressive democracy. I want to make some comments about these 5 democratic parameters: security, private initiative, social cohesion, independent institutions, and pluralistic people participation. Security. Security is a democratic value. It's a source of resources. I remember that I said to my fellow Colombians, we are losing freedom, not because of our governments. All my predecessors were democratic presidents. They were oriented by very solid democratic principles. Colombia was going to lose freedoms because of the terrorist advancement. In Colombia, we knew how important is security as a democratic principle. Of course, without security, it is impossible to advance in investment. And without investment, it is impossible to expand social cohesion. In the country, we can speak about countries of different categories in security. The first category is made up of countries such as Mexico and Colombia. These 2 countries have recognized problems. They have uncovered problems, and they are fighting problems to overcome insecurity and to give a much more safer framework for our communities. In Colombia, we need much more. When my government finished, I said to my fellow Colombians, the country is not a paradise, but we are in good trend. In the second category, there are countries such as Venezuela. They have a growing problem of insecurity, but they do not recognize the problem. Neither do they fight the problem. I remember that some months ago, high-ranking public servant in Venezuela said that security will be a consequence of the victory of the socialist model. She remembered me many years ago when Colombian Marxist, communist-oriented guerrillas said that Colombia was going to live in peace once they imposed the communist model. And the problems were aggravated during their years of violent activities. There are other countries, such as the case of Brazil, with a growing problem of illicit drugs trafficking, domestic distribution and consumption. Brazil is beginning to fight this problem of violence in some cities, such as Rio de Janeiro. But in my opinion, the main challenge for Brazil is to tackle this problem all over the country. There are countries such as Uruguay with a tradition of low violence at the same level of Europe, but there are people concerned with what is there because they have the perception that something is going not as well as it was in the past. And I have asked them, I cannot understand your concerns because your country has the same level of safety than Europe. And their answer is, we need to accept that we cannot compare with other countries. We have to compare us with our own past. Of course, we see the problem of the Central American countries. They have a growing difficulty with violence, but they are very weak in institutions and short of budget. They need the assistance of the international community. Second, private investment. There are countries who are friendly with private investors. Mexico, many of the Central American countries, Panama, Colombia, Chile, Peru, Uruguay, Paraguay. We need political security. What is political security? Is the willingness of the government to create public and general acceptance that private investment is the only way to overcome poverty and to create a better social fabric with much more fair income distribution. In the region, we see some countries that are unfriendly with the private sector. For instance, the government of Venezuela has expropriated over 600 corporations. And my guess is that although they have oil, in the absence of the private sector, at the end, they will level all the people at extreme poverty, as Cuba has done. Social cohesion is not sustainable without private investment. Of course, there are countries such as the case of Ecuador and Argentina, where so far we have not seen massive expropriations. But in Argentina, we have seen some cases. Recently, the case of Repsol. And in Ecuador, people are making a lot of profits, are making a lot of money, but they are not confident that they can invest looking at the long term in this region. It is very important to create investment confidence. And of course, there are countries such as Nicaragua, where at first glance, we get the idea that the private sector flourishes, but it is in danger because there are not institutions. Because over there what we see is a capitalism of friends and adversaries. If you are my friend, if you are the friend of the government, you will do excellently. If you are not a close friend of the government, you are in danger. We need institutions. The third element is social cohesion. Of course, there is a very tight relationship between investment and social cohesion. In Venezuela, because of the lack of private investment, we are not going to see long-term social policies feasible. In Peru, 1.5 years ago, people had a perception that there was a very strong trend of private investment, but a lack of social investment. Much private investment, very low level of social investment. Fortunately, President Humala, in my opinion, is going the right things. He has made the right decisions. He has increased taxes a little bit, not to cross the line from which up it would be possible to discourage private investors. If I were asked what is our main goal in social cohesion, I would say to you, to create in our youngsters entrepreneurial spirit. We need to look much more for the creation of one entrepreneurial society than for one job-seeking society. And of course, keep in mind this. We have no more than 18% of unemployment in the youngsters. 18%. It seems low when we compare with 48, 49 in some countries of Europe. But we could see in the coming years a growing trend of this unemployment. We need to promote corporation, private initiative among the youngsters to provide them with microlending, with capital funds, with venture capital funds, with guarantee funds. In my opinion, this is a main social cohesion goal in our region. Independent institutions. Independent institutions and pluralistic people participation, in my opinion, are the two parameters for people to be confident in the government, in the state. It is much more important for the rule of law that people have confidence in the state than a high level of approval rate for the government. This is the reason of independent institutions and pluralistic people participation. In the past, dictators abolished the independence of institutions. They did it brusquely. Today we see some quasi-dictators on the way of eliminating the independence of institutions, such as the case of Venezuela, Bolivia, Ecuador, Nicaragua. And finally, the fifth element, pluralistic people participation. We see some countries where the government eliminates step by step independent media and at the same time increases the monopoly of governmental owned and controlled media. When independent media disappears and there is a consolidation of state governmental controlled media, therefore the media becomes a tool of propaganda, not a channel of people participation. And it is the beginning of the abolition of the rule of law. In Latin America and the Caribbean, we have made significant progress, but we have some dictators still with elections. And democracy is not elections alone. Democracy is much more than elections. Thank you, my friends. Thank you very much. The only applause I deserve is because I did my delivery in 18 minutes.
President Fox, would you please join us up here? And now we will go to, if you'd like to sit down, President Uribe, please. President Fox, you here, sir, please? Por favor. And now we will have the section in which we have questions and answers from two presidents. You can ask anything you would like, of course. I will tell you, though, that I love that advertisement that is in some of the American Airlines magazines that says the only risk in going to places like Colombia and to Mexico. The only risk is that you may want to stay. So ask anything you want. I know you want to, isn't that right? I know you want to talk about how did you win against the narcos in Colombia and what are they doing in Mexico and what is Josefina, is she going to win and all things, and of course that's all good, but maybe there's some questions also that go into other arenas, they would be welcome also. So we will now open it up for questions, Mr. President, if that's okay with you, yes?
Sí, dame chance de un mensaje.
Yes, please.
No, quiero saludar allá a los de atrás, a los de Gallola. Los últimos serán los primeros en el reino de los cielos. Congratulations, Juan. We have a great audience, and we have great people here. I'd like to start by giving my congratulations, my respect to Juanita, to Pedro, to Lolita, all those wonderful people that work in this place and that have served our tables. Yes. To them, my respect. To all migrants in this great nation, to tell them that I admire them. Colombians, Salvadorians, Mexicans, Peruvians, and all those very special cast of people that one day decided to move out of their homeland, to go through whatever difficulties they might find, looking for their American dream. Because the American dream is not only from this nation. It's a dream that we, all Americans in this continent, share. And they're just looking to be better. They're just looking to grow as persons. They are looking for a better future to their families. I come from a migrant family, both sides, mother and father. Everybody in this room, when you look backwards, you have a migrant origin and a story to tell. Great people, they deserve all of our support and applause. To them is part of what we are doing here in this DFW, metropolitan city. President Uribe gave us a profound look at values of support that our nations in Latin America now enjoy. We moved from dictatorships to democracies. We moved from authoritarian governments to freedom. And today in Latin America, we appreciate what we attained in 2 decades. We got rid of dictators all over Latin America. And these 2 basic fundamental values have proven that nations changed, that people change, and that now Latin America is moving rapidly to narrow the gap on this 21st century. I can say that Latin America will be the leading region on the 21st century. And it's clear, when you look at the facts, the reduction in poverty, the increase in middle classes, and the leadership that this region of the world now has assumed. Today, the leaders seem to be tired I'm referring to North America, United States, and Canada. I'm referring to Europe. No more growth. The engines don't seem to have the fuel to keep pulling the world affair ahead. But the newcomers, the BRICS, and I should say the M-BRICS and plus, the Mexicos, the Indias, the Chinas, the 7 tigers of Asia, and now other emerging nations, dynamic, like Colombia, like Peru, like Chile. Today, the world is changing. The support to the International Monetary Fund now is coming from emerging nations that have the vision that we must share what we have in order to join together in building this new world. Of course, we miss the leaders. We don't see them around as we used to. We must be very careful on thinking about this. Leaders must come back to lead. And I'm referring to this great nation. The future is in our hands. And this is why this partnership we have put together to be here in this place, in this moment, with you, TCU, the World Affairs Council, Vicente Fox, and the rest of the stakeholders and stockholders. We want to pull the wagon. We want to make sure that we conquer the future. Institutions are key and crucial, no doubt. Democracy, freedom has been to Latin America the new oxygen, the new power to lead and to change and to include the excluded. And this is what we're trying to build here together with each and every one of you. Institutions are important, but nothing substitutes leadership. Nothing substitutes passion, compassion, love, vision, capacity to see the future. And this is what we're building together here, this community. And I'm sure that unity of purpose, I'm sure that team working, I'm sure that through love and passion, we will keep leadership of this world within our part of the world. This so projected future trend and change from west to the east is what the experts forecast. But the leaders can change that. The leaders can make miracles. I'm not in agreement that the philosophy of the Western civilization will change as fast as 10 years from now, from east to west. Excuse me, from west to east. So I hope that through this exercise of dialogue, through all of us committing and participating, we will make sure that we build that better world. Mexico's in problems right now. I envy President Uribe. Colombia was able to meet the threat. Colombia was able to overcome the problems. And as he said, it's not paradise yet, but they are on the path. Right now, Mexico needs the support, the help, and the unity of all of us so that we can come out of the trap where we are. And Mexico will come out of that trap. I don't have any doubt about this. But it's human being thinking and leadership which make this happen. We're right now enjoying the fruit, the gift of democracy, which is electoral processes. Electoral processes bring us the opportunity to rethink, to reshape, to evaluate, to correct, to impulse, to generate new ideas, new public policies, so that we keep our path of growing to the future. Mexico is facing this great opportunity at this point in time. And I am absolutely convinced that democracy will bring in the gift of leadership, the gift of bright minds, the gift of leadership and unity behind leadership. And we will come very strong after this election. This is my best wish, and I know it will happen. So, Presidente Uribe, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you,
And now let's get to business. Now let's get to business. Let's put together ideas.
I'll summarize very quickly, I hope I do it well, but that he was congratulating on the one hand both Mexico and Colombia for how they have been advancing, but what about Venezuela is the question to both of you.
Your neighbor.
I am not the right
neighbor.
I am not the right person to answer this question because of my biases. But what I see, first, as President of Colombia, I could not accept that the government of Venezuela provided hideouts to Colombian terrorists. This was the reason of my disagreements with President Chavez. Second, as I stated previously in my introductory remarks, Venezuela does not fulfill the democratic standards. Look at this. While Bogota, our capital city in Colombia, last year had 17 cases of killing per every 100,000 inhabitants, Caracas had 108. While my country has come down from 68 killings per every 100,000 inhabitants to less than 30, Venezuela has passed from 10 to almost 70. Venezuela is making all the people poor because of the lack of private investment. Venezuela no longer has independent institutions. If you are the owner of one independent newspaper, of one independent radio station, you are in danger if you criticize the government. I remember that 2 years ago, Venezuela elected a new Congress. And President Chavez did not get the majority he had in the previous Congress. And before the inauguration of the new Congress, the outgoing Congress gave him powers for him to replace the new Congress. In my opinion, it was a coup against one branch of the state. And the Organization of American States did not face one single word of criticism. What about the future? I cannot speak about the life or the death. These are questions of God. As politicians, we have to fight. I have my best wishes for the democratic opposition of Venezuela to win this year. In my opinion, the candidate of the opposition is having an excellent attitude. He's calling for the unity of the people of Venezuela. He has said the poor people, My government will remain with the same policies you have enjoyed during the Chavez administration, but with two differences. These policies will be reshaped in order to lift you out of poverty, not for you to receive subsidies to remain poor. This is the first difference. And the second one, he has said, we need to encourage the private sector again to make the social policies sustainable in Venezuela. This candidate has not answered President Chavez's insults. In my opinion, he's doing well. In Colombia, there are some political leaders angry at me because I have said that I will go to visit all the towns in our border with Venezuela to speak about democratic values, to speak about the necessity to defeat the dictatorship in Venezuela. And many people have said to me, you cannot do this because we have to respect the autonomy of every country. But I want to remember to them, at the moment we read the Charter of the United Nations, we see that democratic values are over. The autonomy are prevalent upon the autonomy of the countries. Therefore, we need our fellows, our Latin American fellows of the people of Venezuela. I invite you to provide all your support to the opposition of Venezuela for Venezuela to flourish again, for Venezuela to flourish again with democratic values, my friend. Venezuela is at the moment to have a clear conciliation between democratic values and the advancement of social cohesion.
Muy bien.
Bravo. Yes.
Let me make a brief comment here. I've been saying that when we are invited, like this invitation to President Uribe or myself, to speak among the community and the private sector, usually we get the feeling that you want to hear from us what politicians are doing, what they are thinking, and what they're planning to the future. And in a way, we're accepting that we're on the back seat of the car. And we're accepting that politicians are taking the driving seat and setting the path and the way to go. I really personally miss, coming from the private sector, the presence of a strong voice, a balance between private sector and public sector. Maybe most of the headaches that we're having today is that we as citizens, we as private sector are not doing enough. We're not organized enough, and we're not making our voice be heard and taking the driver's seat and setting the path to the future.